In a 2024 draft class that isn't exactly spectacular, one guy has separated himself as the player to watch within the playoff race in the West this year, within the Rookie of the Year race, and that is Zach Edey for the Memphis Grizzlies. Obviously, it's preseason, but I think a lot of the stuff that we're seeing from him right now are things that we are going to see from him all season long. Offensively, he is going to be an absolute weapon for Memphis. When they picked him as high as they did, I think a good amount of people were surprised, given the fact that he stayed in college a long time and he's this big, lumbering center. Those kinds of guys, generally speaking, in the modern NBA, they don't get picked very high. And when they made the selection, my thought process was, okay, he could be a really nice weapon off the bench, someone that provides them offense. A team in Memphis that actually kind of needs an infusion of offense, especially in the front court. He can play 20 minutes a game against the other team's backup bigs and just be an absolute problem. Think like a Jonas Valanciunas kind of role for him off the bench for Memphis. That's what I thought. But clearly, there's going to be more happening here. And I think Zach Edey is going to be the starting five for Memphis this year. And now that we've actually seen him with Memphis, again, just preseason, it immediately becomes clear, okay, yeah, this is going to be a problem for certain teams in certain matchups. His just overall size, his skill level is something that some teams around the league just do not have the personnel to deal with. We have gone away from having bigger defensive bigs on rosters because everybody shoots threes now. Everybody plays 5 out, drive and kick. And we're starting to go back more towards having a bruising option at the 5. Of course, some of the best players in the league, and Embiid and Jokic, and that's not what Zach Edey is going to be. But just from a personnel standpoint, it is such an advantage to have someone that is his size. And there's a couple of things that I think people misunderstand a little bit about Edey. First of all, he is incredibly skilled in the post. It's not just that he's big, but he can go to the jump hook with either hand. He can drop step. He's got good footwork, good agility. He never gets tired. He played basically every minute of every game for Purdue in college last year. He's in incredibly good shape, and hopefully that means that he's going to be healthy as well. And he makes his free throws. He's a really good free throw shooter, and that combination separates himself from some of the other guys that we've seen at this size, like Boban Marjanovic, or you think about other, bruising post-style bigs that have come out of college. None of them have that combination of things the way that Edey does. And for Memphis, this is huge. I mean, this is a team that people, generally speaking, have forgotten about because last year was so weird, and certainly there's still a lot of question marks to be figured out for Memphis this year, but I think they're going to be really good. In the regular season, when Ja has been healthy, and basically every year other than last year, they've been really good. They win 45, they win 50 games. They're one of the better teams in the conference from a regular season record standpoint. And basically all the pieces of the teams that did that are still there and or have been improved. They have the Marcus Smart addition from last offseason. They, of course, bring in Edey in the draft. And if I was a Memphis fan, I would be extremely excited about the possibilities of this team and what Edey could provide for them. Some question marks certainly for him are obviously health. Anytime you're dealing with someone that is that big. Defensively, at the rim, he's really, really good, but in the NBA, he's going to have to guard in space way more than he ever did in college. And of course, teams are going to target the kind of slow, big white guy at the 5. Like, they're definitely going to attack him. They're going to try and get him into switches. He's going to be playing drop. He's going to be playing more aggressive sometimes up on the pick and roll. And it's going to be very interesting to see how they can hide him because offensively, I do think it's going to be a real weapon. But if he can't guard, it's going to be very difficult for him to play. And I don't know that that is a problem that's going to just get solved. And the other thing for Memphis as a team is if you're going to play the Edey style a little bit, you're going to give him some post touches, which I think you have to. I think if he's going to be out there and you want to utilize him properly, like he's going to be good in ball screens, he's going to be good in the offensive glass, but you need to give him some post touches on occasion. Do they have the spacing to make that work around him? Because theoretically, if it's him, Jaren Jackson, Marcus Smart, Desmond Bane, and Ja Morant, Marcus Smart's jump shot comes and goes, and Ja Morant's just not an off-ball floor spacer from 3. It's just not something that he does. And Jaren Jackson will shoot a bunch of them, but he's not exactly the most accurate guy. So the best spacer out there, of course, is Desmond Bane, but the other guys, not so much. So is he going to have the space to operate, or a team's just going to double off him? And he's a good passer, so that can create some other options for them. But specifically to his play style, I'm not sure that Memphis is super well equipped, at least with their best unit, to provide the spacing that he might need to operate in the post a little bit. But having said all those things, I still think it's going to be an asset for them. If they can figure out a way to build a defensive structure around him that makes sense, it certainly makes me nervous that you're trusting a rookie at the 5 spot, the most important defensive position on the floor, and you see yourselves as a top 4 playoff team in the Western Conference. I definitely would be nervous about that part if I was Memphis, but if they can figure that out, it's kind of exactly what they need, because for Memphis, the issue for them, whether it be at the end of games or the regular season and the postseason, has been offensively, they just don't have consistent options because Ja isn't like a fantastic free throw shooter. He's not a very good jump shooter, so he can get to the rim and then you can do some kickouts. Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson, these guys shoot, but they don't necessarily have offensive weapons other than, hey, here's a ball screen for Ja, here's a ball screen for Desmond Bane. And so to have another option with Zach Edey in the post, with him as a better roller to the rim than anybody that they've had. No disrespect to guys they've had in the past like JV and Steven Adams, but Edey theoretically, just because of his size and his motor, is going to be better than those guys as a roller, and all of that is extremely additive offensively for Memphis. And if I had to guess right now, I think I would pick him as my favorite to win the Rookie of the Year award. It's him and Reed Sheppard are kind of the two guys near the top, and for Sheppard, I just don't know that he's necessarily going to be playing a ton. He's very good, but there's just a ton of guys there in Houston that are going to be vying for minutes, and I don't know that they're going to trust a rookie to necessarily play a ton, whereas Memphis, they need Zach Edey to play. They need him to be at the 5. Brandon Clark is coming back from an injury. Of course, they're going to put Jaren Jackson at times at the 5 and play a little bit smaller, but they're counting on him, and I think he's going to be impactful. I think he's going to put up good numbers. And Memphis, if I had to pick one of those teams, either Memphis or Houston, where they're going to finish this year in the Western Conference standings, I would say Memphis is going to finish higher in the regular season than Houston. All of this obviously is very dependent on the Ja situation, him actually having his head on straight and actually playing games and being healthy. Memphis had terrible injury luck last year, and even with the Edey addition, we also still don't know what this team looks like really with Marcus Smart out there, because he barely played last year, certainly without or with any of the other guys on the floor, Ja and Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson, those guys out there as well. So Memphis is such an interesting team to me, and the Edey thing makes it that much more interesting because you're counting so much, relying so much on not a young guy, but a rookie. Obviously, Edey came out of college after a handful of years there, and he's going to play a really massive role for a team that I think has real expectations and sees themselves as one of the better teams in the conference. Whether they're correct or not, that's certainly their own expectation. The only other wrinkle here that maybe we will see at some point throughout the year is if maybe Edey's going to hit a couple of jump shots. Maybe he can hit a 15, 16-footer. Maybe he's going to be out there trying to put some threes up. I wouldn't necessarily focus on that too much. If I was Memphis right now, he has to figure out defensive coverages at the NBA level. He has to deal with a more physical game at the NBA level, at least guys that are bigger and stronger than they were in college. I wouldn't put even more on his plate and say, hey, go and shoot 300 threes every single day. Maybe down the road, that'll be something that he'll add. I certainly think that he has the touch to be able to do it. But hey, you never know. Maybe they're going to be running some 5-out sets, and Edey and Jaren Jackson going to be out there in the perimeter. Ja's going to be attacking the rim. I'm really intrigued with all the different stuff that they're going to try to do to make it work offensively and defensively for Edey. And honestly, I like the pick because what else were you going to do in this class, right? Like if you're a Memphis team that needs immediate impact, you already have your core group of guys in Triple J, Desmond Bane and Ja Morant. You're committed to those guys no matter what happens with Ja moving forward. Like he's still just kind of your guy. So picking some random wing that might not really play for you, it wasn't really going to be that impactful, right? So picking the most NBA ready player potentially in the entire class at a position of need looks like it's going to work out for Memphis. I can't wait to see actual games where he's, playing against Jokic, or the twice a year they play against Embiid, him against Victor Wembanyama, like seeing him against these different archetypes that we now have in the NBA at the 4 and at the 5. I cannot wait to see the impact that Zach Edey may or may not have this year.